All praises to the Most High for another day. Blessings to all the 12 tribes of Israel and to all the Gentiles that will cling to the house of Jacob. Today, we're going to read from the book of Remembrance of Enoch, the Essene book of Hagi. For the upright shall announce righteousness to the upright, and the righteous ones shall rejoice with the righteous ones and present each other with gifts. 1 Enoch, chapter 81, verse 7 through 8. Introduction. In 2007, we published the original hardbound copy of the Book of Remembrance of Enoch. At the same time, we published an abridged paperback that we made available to the public. In 2007, there was a need to hold back the complete copy because in it were instructions from the Lord to Enoch telling him how to divide the earth so that mankind would remain the objects of creation. In Enoch's day, before the flood, there were strong forces whose intention it was to divide the earth so that the Derkadershi would become the objects of creation instead of mankind. This was a major reason why the Lord brought the flood. In the original complete text, instructions were given to those in our day, Salakia, during the tribulations, that the divisions of Enoch would have to be reaffirmed, pushing back against the same forces that were present before the flood and which were said to come to be present again in our day. The division of the earth by Enoch was permanent and never needs to be redone. The same could be said for the reaffirmation which occurred sometime after 2007. So because of this, we feel free to now reprint the original complete text of the Book of Remembrance of Enoch, completely unabridged with all the historical instructions included for dividing the earth. This volume also contains vital instructions for protecting the Lord's people against spiritual attack during the tribulation times. An appendix has been added which includes specific information of how to implement those protections and helps. There will also be a forthcoming handbook of established righteousness that will be printed as a separate volume and be a companion book of instructions for implementing the information in the 4-volume series of the Book of Remembrance. Our intent with the handbook is to give enough information that some spiritual leader or group could, by the leadings of the Lord, establish for their people the religion of the ancients, known as the religion of Shabuah. In the tribulation times, it is going to be difficult for the Lord's people to find their way to establish holy environments and communities that can sustain themselves, and the knowledge of righteousness is vital to make those attempts successful. The holy lifestyle of living within the covenant while not walking in the way of the wicked will be made easier for them. Our desire is to bless those who love the Lord with this information, holding nothing back. We feel that this information will be a treasure to others like it has been a treasure for us. And we know that it will be of rich benefit for those who implement it by the leadings of the Spirit of the Lord. Those who are not led by Him will find that such an effort will not prosper. As this volume goes to print, it seems that it would be beneficial to include here information about how we processed Salakia in our receiving this Book of Remembrance series. In 1990, we received from the Lord our covenant. That was the first we had ever heard of a Book of Remembrance. The covenant has a phrase in it that reads, "The token of this covenant I have sent and is before you," even that part of the Book of Remembrance which reveals to you how to prepare to stand before me at the last day. This was 7 years before we obtained the Urim and the Thummim. At that time, we had copies of 4 of the stone tablets that we were about to copy from museum photos. They are the right tablet, the Waverly tablet, the Gateskill tablet, and the Wilmington tablet. By the time we had the Urim in 1997, we had received 3 more tablets, 2 written by the finger of God directly, and the other one I was able to see in a vision. One of these is the Judgment Tablet, which became the source for the Book of Remembrance, the first and second books of Hagi. Another was a version of the Covenant Tablet, which is called the Gateskill Tablet. That tablet I will include at the end of the Book of Remembrance of Melchizedek. There are 2 copies of the Covenant Tablet. One that is a copy of the Gateskill Tablet, which is the source of the Book of Remembrance of Melchizedek, and another copy actually written by the finger of God. There is an explanation of how we came by this tablet in that section of that volume. When the original printing of the Book of Remembrance, the first and second books of Hagi, went to print in 2001, we did not know it was any part of the Book of Remembrance, so we didn't title it that way. Then when we received the Book of Remembrance of Enoch, we realized that the Book of Remembrance would be more than 1 volume, but we just titled it the Book of Remembrance with the first printing in 2007. After our first printing of the complete text of the Book of Remembrance of Enoch, we became aware of the Bible text in Malachi 3:16, which actually prophesies this book. It was quite amazing to us because the context of Malachi 3:16 is such to indicate that the Book of Remembrance would be written before him, indicating the use of the Urim. And the Book of Remembrance was for the purpose of revealing the true nature of God to those who revere his name. This was actually what our book did. To add to that, we also discovered a fragment entitled 4Q417 plus 4Q418 in a volume by Abegg, Wise and Cook, published in 1996 on page 381. This is what it says in a brief introduction to the translation of this fragment. In early Judaism, there was a legend that Seth, son of Adam, wrote out many revelations on stone tablets, which could be read only by the righteous using the Urim. And to quote a portion of this fragment, a Book of Remembrance stands written before him for those who keep his words, and that is the vision of insight, the Book of Remembrance, and he bequeathed it to Enoch with a spiritual people, because his nature was patterned after the holy angels, the Erkadeshi. What made this fragment so important to us is we had published in the Book of Remembrance, the first and second Hagi, an account of Seth establishing stone tablets. Our book has the Book of Seth and the Book of beheld, written by Enoch. And we found even more evidence to support our Book of Remembrance in the Dead Sea Scrolls in what is called the Damascus document. In the Dead Sea Scrolls by Charlesworth on page 35, CDMSB 20, verse 17 through 21, it reads, "But the penitents from sin among Jacob kept God's covenant. Then each will speak to his neighbor, each helping his brother to be righteous, firmly placing their feet in the way of God. And God listened to their words and heard, and a book of remembrance was written before him concerning those who reverence God and consider his name, until salvation and righteousness will be revealed to those who revere God." From this reading, we began to understand that our original hardcover printing was meant to go to all those who revere God. This was evidence for us that encouraged us to reprint the complete text of the Book of Remembrance of Enoch. We were further encouraged to reprint this volume for the public by a quotation we found in the Old Testament Pseudepigrapha, Volume 1 by Charlesworth on page 59, 1 Enoch chapter 81, verse 6 through 8, which reads, "So that you may teach your children another law, and write it down for them, and give all of them a warning. Let your heart be strong, for the upright shall announce righteousness to the upright, and the righteous ones will rejoice with the righteous ones, and they shall present each other with gifts. And this is stated in the context of the arm of the Lord being revealed at the end of tribulation times, when the evil will be destroyed, as referred to in the war scroll in Col 1:6-7. Another law is referenced in CD 6-8, chapter 6, verse 8-11 in Charlesworth. And the nobles of the peoples are those who come to excavate the well with the statues which were ordained by the ruler to walk in them in the entire time of evil, and who will obtain no others until the rise of one who will teach righteousness in the end days. This volume is also known as the Book of Meditation, and it is referred to in the scrolls as the Book of Hagi. It is in the community rule in 1 QSA, chapter 1, 6-7. It was required reading for all the youth born in community and for every new recruit. The Book of Hagi is also mentioned in the Damascus document 3 times. The word Hagi is Strong's Concordance Hebrew, number 2287, which means to move in a circle, to march in a sacred procession, dance, keep a solemn feast, reel to and fro. This describes perfectly the dance of Kava, to dance around the altar to bless it. Kava is the name for Eve. And this volume is composed of 2 books, the Book of Seth and the other one by Enoch. In light of 4Q 417, there is no doubt that this volume is the Book of Hagi. This volume contains the entire description of the organization and function of the primitive church. It is only natural it would be the first source of instruction for members of the community. So, in consideration to all of this, we are now determined to make an unabridged edition of the Book of Remembrance of Enoch, with all of its protections and instructions for the upright available to you. Because the Urim produces a vision as seen through the eyes of God, to whatever extent a mere human seer can behold it, the ancient mind is at times revealed. With this in mind, it will be good to explain some terms and concepts that the reader may find unfamiliar. In the generations before the floods, concepts about God were just being developed. The direct contact our first parents had with God in Eden became the foundation of those developing views. In Eden there was God, just God. There was as yet no concept of Father and the man that he became, the Son. Before they sinned in Eden, they knew God, but after they sinned, they were still in Eden for a few days, and during that brief interlude, they were then dealing with the Son of God, because he is the one to deal with sin. But they could not distinguish the difference. The record says that upon leaving Eden, they began to be aware of somehow God felt different. He followed them out of Eden. Now he healed a hurt finger, and the wind could blow upon his garments to make them move. Also now he was comforting to them in a new way. So he began to be thought of as Matzah, the God who goes with me. Strong's Concordance, number 4161. And his presence was comforting and carried a strong effect of bringing newness and healing. So he was associated in their minds with sweet, clear running water. The name Matzah encompasses all that. And in their new world, where animals preyed upon one another and the elements could be severe and threatening, they could distinguish that Matzah was entirely non-threatening and was absolutely harmless, like a baby lamb. And when a lamb spoke to them one day, the Lord began to embody that feeling of harmlessness. Before the time of the flood, Christ was first known as Matzah the Lamb. Prior to this, when God was standing before them in Eden, our first parents had thought to one another during their courtship about who God was. And in answer to these thoughts, God said to them, I am loving kindness. This is what he said to Moses when answering the same question. All that has survived from that encounter on Sinai is the answer, I am. Moses already knew that God existed. He was looking for a name. I am loving kindness is a very personal name, and it is said, Enoch is said. Enoch, number 595, is I am, and Chesed 26:17 is loving kindness. In those days, the Ki and the Chi were pronounced the same way. The two words therefore naturally flow together, having a common connecting syllable. This name probably did not survive after the flood because societies wanted a God who would destroy their enemies, and a God who was loving kindness would not do that. Revelation 2:17 and 3:12 says that in the last day God will get a new name. Enoch said is that new name of God and is announced in the book of Remembrance. The names of our first family that we are all familiar with came about in the process of time after the flood, and they express ideas which are inappropriate to have come from a loving God or loving parents in ancient times. Here are some examples. Abel, Strong's 1892, means something transitory, needs to be replaced, unsatisfactory, emptiness. Jesus said that Abel was righteous. Why would God name him unsatisfactory? Or what kind of parent would name a new baby needs to be replaced or emptiness? His original name was Mattaniah, meaning gift of God, Strong's Concordance 4893. The name Cain 7013 means to strike fast, which comes from 6969, to chant the feelings of death. Who would ever name a baby that? Cain's original name was Kenna, Strong 7070, which means a clamorous reed or a sweet reed. Again, the name Adam 120 means a human being of low degree, a hypocrite. Why would God ever name him that? His original name was Yatsakad, which means the first companion and counselor to creation, and also the first person to walk upon the ground. Strong's 3289 and 259. And the name Eve appears only 4 times in the Bible, twice in the Old Testament and twice in the New. Eve is not a Hebrew word. The word for her name is Kava 2332. In Greek it is Yoah 2096, which is the Greek form of Kava. I don't know where the word Eve came from. There are numerous names in the Book of Remembrance series. Some are familiar and some are not. An effort has been made to put the meaning of names in italics following the names, and in some cases the Strong's number is footnoted. A major concept that is essential to grasp throughout the Book of Remembrance series is the worldview of the ancients, that all the diverse forms in creation are alive and seen to be living souls and are referred to as angels or watchers, that 2/3 of them are good and holy, and 1/3 are evil and have a corrupting influence. They all have names, and the ancient people developed strict boundaries in their relationships with them. The evil ones who fell away from God are called Derkadershi, the fallen bullies. In the books of Enoch, a translation by J.T. Milik, on the Cave 4 material, he lists the Derkadershi on page 152 and records the names of their 20 leaders. In the fragment 4QEN 1:1-6 on line 3, the word Erkadeshi appears. That is the ancient name for watchers, angels. Strong's number 5894 and 6944, which means holy or sacred. There are 24 leaders of the Erkadeshi listed. The Book of Remembrance, the Book of Enoch, Salakia, from Cave 4 says that the Derkadeshi have 200 followers and the Erkadeshi have 600. Here then is a chart listing these two groups with their names. A lot of information and understanding about the character of the angels watchers has accumulated over time, and much of what is known is in this chart.